How's it going today, ladies and gentlemen? So a little while ago, I came across a video showing Dead Space being done in the style of the PS1 era Resident Evil. You know, third-person tank controls, fixed camera angles for the rooms, whole shebang. And it was definitely interesting, but it wasn't available for download. Now, given what I just told you, imagine my surprise when I was on itch.io, you know, the indie game site, when I came across Dead Space content on there. And being a major fan of retro games, as much as they tend to drive me nuts at times, I had an itch that needed a scratch, and this just so happened to be what the doctor ordered. So, it is known as Dead Space Devolved. Now, this game is very, very interesting. So, when I first fired it up, I was treated to what seemed to be a brain in the background, and the menu was very simplified. Just start, exit, you know, that sort of thing. So when I fired up the game, it showed the controls on a controller, an old school PlayStation controller at that, and that was really cool. And it actually has a fairly long intro sequence covering the first few minutes of the Dead Space game when your team gets ambushed by necromorphs. Now, after the intro, the game dumps you into the very first mission: restore the tram system. Now, once you arrive in the starting area, you have the iconic message of cut off their limbs. You got the plasma cutter sitting on the table. You got ammo sitting off towards the rear. And you picked it up like you're in Quake or Doom because it's lying on the ground and you're in business. Now, given the fact that, well, anyone who's watching this is more likely more than familiar with Dead Space and how it plays, but as always with these videos, I will be doing my usual breakdown because when I do videos like this, that's how I roll. Gameplay's pretty straightforward. Movement feels very Dead Space. You're moving down halls slowly and carefully, and your suit feels suitably heavy. You're almost afraid something's going to come out and bite you. Like just crunch right in your face. And you've got your cutter, which is the only weapon available, which is aimed and fired by the right and left mouse buttons, respectively, with your middle button switching modes. Shoot the limbs off, wash, rinse, repeat. Stasis is, well, stasis. It slows shit down. Though I will say instead of, stasis recharge and, module points, it refills over time, which is an interesting simplification of the mechanic. The only enemy you face is a slasher, and, well, it's a slasher. They move towards you and try to cut you up. Dismemberment is full effect, shooting heads, limbs, and so on and so forth, until the enemy dies. Though I will say that once an enemy dies, they completely fall to pieces. Which is pretty amusing considering that when I had one leaping at me going down a ramp and I killed it, it literally went whoom, just fell completely to pieces. If you get hurt in combat, healing is only a button's press away. The inventory is straightforward too, though you don't seem to be able to use items out of it, you're just able to drop it. And the gameplay is occasionally broken up by cutscenes using the hologram sequences from the original game when you complete certain objectives. It's a little jarring to the flow of the game, but it's not really that much of an issue. The game also has controller support, which is kind of nice if you don't like playing with a keyboard, and there is no melee, so if a necromorph gets too close, well, you either back the fuck up or shoot him. Only way you're getting out of it. Now, graphics and sound-wise, well, the sound is pretty nice. Plasma cutter sounds suitably hefty, and the slashers let out their signature roar. I've noticed that when Isaac gets hit, there doesn't seem to be any sound or impact noises. Although I will say the environmental audio is also very well done and is given just a slight 90s touch. A little bit on the bit crush side and adds that just right amount of retro feel to it. Now, graphics wise, well, it's 90s era PSX crispy goodness. The models are suitably chunky and the texturing is very good on them. Animations, at least for the slashers, do leave something to be desired, but they are still solid enough that they look nice, and the gore effects are also pretty nice. Though I will say the environment does feel a little on the bland side, and the lighting doesn't quite hit. Walking around it feels more like I'm just going through a set of generic sci-fi ship corridors instead of the Ishimura's hellish, blood-soaked bowels. There's no evidence of fighting, you don't see any bloodstains on the floor, but it didn't hit right. Hell, aside from a few times I damn near ran into a slasher, I didn't feel the dread that I always do when playing the original. Now, to draw comparisons to the era of gaming that it's trying to emulate, Silent Hill, the OG Resident Evil, and even Tomb Raider are all able to create some pretty good environments in spite of the limitations of the hardware at the time. Which goes to show that atmosphere does play quite a bit into making games like this. And I know Tomb Raider isn't a horror game, but there are some horror-esque moments. But I do feel like this is a fairly minor gripe for what the game is. Now my final verdict for what it is, according to the dev to learn both Unreal 4 as well as the PS1 aesthetic, and to give a feel of an overly ambitious dev team trying to squeeze every last drop of performance out of an aging console, it's pretty nice. Aside from a few minor gripes, mostly related to environment, it's an interesting little time killer. The game will take you, minus the intro, around 15 minutes to complete, even if you get a little turnaround like I did. Again, props to the dude that made it, he did a good job. Anyways, I've been Farzy, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.